friends, it's me, Katy, and this is Katy Needs a Podcast. Usually, we talk to an array of people, so why change anything today? Today, I'm joined by someone who I've been able to follow both musically and comically for years now. A few years ago, he stepped away from music and started to really focus on comedy, specifically Kaufman-esque surreal cerebral comedy. Now, his sets are hard to describe, almost intentionally uncomfortable to watch until you catch the joke, and then side-stitchingly funny. Is that a word? Stitchingly? Well, it is now. I submit to you, Oxford. Friends, meet Derek Feltner. Derek, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, hello. Yes, I'm Derek Lee Feltner. How is everybody? I didn't hear anything. So I assume that they're saying, "Hey."
They're good. They're just very shy. Very, very shy. I need to understand your journey. Like, where are you from? Weren't you in bands? How did you get into comedy and how did you choose this particular style?
So yes, I'm originally from a very small town called Tekonsha, Michigan, which is a population of around I think the last census was like 600 or 700 people. So the band that I was in at home, which was a band called Mulligan, our guitarist Jake, he had moved up to Kalamazoo to go to college, to go to Western, and then I eventually moved up because I was dating someone in Grand Rapids. I couldn't move to Grand Rapids, but I had two friends who were going to be moving to Kalamazoo, so I moved into their apartment with them. My band Mulligan kind of came and went shortly after I moved up here, maybe like a year or two after that, and then I wasn't doing anything musical for maybe like 6 months, uh, like actively. But then I joined a band called Search Party for Mel. One of the earlier shows I did with them was the last like Mulligan show that I had done. And then I was in that band for a while, and then that band ended, and then that turned into a new band called Their Teeth Will Be a Lions, which I was in that band for quite a while, and we released albums and did the best we could for touring. We did a lot of weekend jaunts. Never was able to go like full weeks or anything like that. Eventually, that band started to dissolve, and members of that band, including myself, we started another band called Brass Bows, and that lasted for a while. In all of that, I met the Liveys, who were in a band called Terra Terra Oh My, and I made a joke to them one time about, you know, a guitar would sound really cool in their band. And a conversation with John, the drummer, he was like, "Yeah, I think it'd be really cool if I had guest players in the band." So he asked me to be the first guest player, and then I went to their practice, and it sounded really good. And then we did a show, and then he said, "You know what? I'm not going to do guest players. You can just stay in the band. That sounds really good." So, and that band was fun, and I enjoyed it immensely. And we put a record out also. And then John and Steph, they had a child, Bruce, their son. He's really awesome. And life happened, so the band ended, and I was okay with that. And then I got into comedy after years of talking with other comedian friends I had made about it. And now looking back on it, I didn't realize how kind of probably annoying I was that I would walk up to them after they had performed and talk about comedy stuff and jokes. Obviously, they were always really nice, but I'm pretty sure now they're like, "Dude, I wish you would just like went up on stage." So eventually, I asked my friend Adam West because I figured he would be of all the comedian friends I knew at the time. I figured he would be the least, I guess, mean about it. Like if I asked, like, "How do I do this? How do I get involved?" And yeah, he pointed me in the right direction, and I did my first open mic at Rupert's for their Sunday night show, and I messaged the guy that ran it, Nate, and was really excited about the whole thing. He's like, "All right, I got you on this date. You'll go last at the end of the show." And I was so excited. Like, "Oh, going on last. That's really awesome. They must have really high hopes for me." I found out afterwards, they're like, "No, they put you on last because that way all the people you brought would stay the whole night and not
Yeah.
leave early." So, um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was the first one, and I have done it in some capacity ever since then, and going on like 8 years I've done comedy. So
That's a lengthy history of heavy hitter bands. Like locally, their Teeth of Be Lions, Terra Terra Oh My, Brass Bows, they all carry resonance with the people in the scene. And it's awesome to talk to you about any of this stuff. But like your comedy is primarily what you've been focusing on for a number of years now. So it circles back to the question, like your particular style isn't just going up on stage and rattling off a joke with a punchline at the end. It's a very unique style that kind of is like Kaufman-esque. So how did you get there? Because it's like something that I feel like takes a long time to curate.
yeah, so Andy Kaufman is my biggest influence. I remember getting a VHS tape at a garage sale, and it was like a box of VHSs. Most of them were like wrestling tapes, like completely like off the market bootlegger type of things with like handmade like boxes for them to go in. But one of them was they just said Andy Kaufman, Jerry Lawler, and I watched it as a kid, and I realized now that it was years later I realized as an adult like, oh, that was the whole special that they did after those events of Andy Kaufman and Jerry Lawler's wrestling feud, which if you know anything about that, great. If not, definitely look into it. It's awesome. It was a major part in the Man on the Moon movie that Jim Carrey did also. But so yeah, he's my biggest influence, and I I always like the weird stuff, and with what I do now, a lot of it comes from I took anything that would look cool if you're in a band and then applied it to comedy because, a guy with a guitar in a band on stage looks cool, you know, man, woman, whatever, put a guitar on them in front of a band. Most people look at that and go, that is the cool of cool. You don't get cooler than that. If you put a person with a guitar on them and then put them in a comedy show, to me, the audience instantly kind of recoils like, oh, this is going to be bad. It's going to be parody songs. It's going to be sing along stuff. And I thought that was funny. So leading up to the first show I ever did, I was like, I should probably have a guitar. That'd be kind of cool. And I had never owned an acoustic guitar of my own. So I reached out to my friends, and my friend Sammy said, "Oh yeah, you can use my guitar." And then she brought it to the show, and she's like, "Hey, sorry, like, it doesn't have new strings on it, and I don't even know if it's going to stay in tune." I go, "That's fine. Like, that's fine." And then it went up on stage with me, and it sat there, and I did my set, and like there wasn't one joke. And now, as I think about it, some of the stuff I said would be funny to do now, but like I went up there and said, "Hey guys, my name's Derek. I don't tell jokes, I tell stories," which is one of the the big like comedy do's or don'ts of what not to do during comedy. And so I told this story about going to Moe's, the burrito place, and the host had told me like, "Hey, you're gonna get 7 minutes." So I put a timer going in my phone for 7 minutes, and I did my whole set, and then my timer went off in the middle of me talking. Like I never even got to the punchline, and I just said, "All right, thanks guys, that's my time," and I just like that was how my set ended. Yeah, like all the weird stuff just has come from either it happened accidentally or I saw something like in a movie or like a band playing that looked really cool. And I thought, yeah, that looks cool. But if I was to do it in a comedy setting, it could be very awkward and uncomfortable and may end up getting people to laugh. A lot of the band stuff that I, did throughout my life has influenced what I do now just because it's a completely different animal. Like, and I hate to keep using the word cool, but that's what it is. A
Yeah.
band is a band is so cool. Like a band, a performer, or like a musician, that is as cool as you can get. And then comedian, especially with a guitar, it's like, oh man, he has a guitar. What's gonna happen?
So, how much of the comedy that you write, because like when I think of Kaufman, especially how he's portrayed in movies like Man on the Moon, it's like he wrote his comedy so that he would laugh in a way where it was like the joke was on kind of everybody else. But a lot of your stuff seems a lot more intentional. Like you're still trying to have the audience in on it. Like, what is your process when you approach writing?
So yeah, I don't ever. I mean, yeah, obviously stuff I write, I'm thinking to myself first, this is really funny, and I think it's really funny, or I'll think, God, that's stupid, and then I'll definitely want to do it. I am gonna say something arrogant. That's what I'm gonna say right now.
Do
So
it. Preach.
if there's a way to sum up my comedy, it would be equivalent to the guy that you see at a show wearing a Hot Rod Circuit t-shirt. It's like, we get it, dude. You're real. We got it. Like you're like so in the know and so like we got it. Okay. Like my process is like I'm this bit I have right now that I've been working on. I've never watched Seinfeld. I've never watched Seinfeld. Like I've seen like two episodes in my lifetime, and they were fine. One was the episode where they get lost in a parking garage, and then the other one I watched was half of the episode where they're taking cans back to return them. Like they went
Okay.
to another state. So I thought of this idea. I'm like, what if I was to rig up either a recording on my tape player or I have a sampler that I could record it on, like a bunch of versions of it. But I thought about just recording the like that sound
Yeah.
and then just while I'm talking, not even like lining up with like a punchline, just hitting the button so that would just play through like boop doop doop and see how long it would take where the before the audience would go from like laughing to being like, come on, stop hitting the button. But yeah, I mean, I don't ever want the audience to feel like they're not in on the joke. And I do my best to kind of lead them with a breadcrumb trail. Like, come on, come along with me. We might veer off left and right, but you're still with me. And also, I think it's really cool with comedy that someone is giving another person a microphone for X amount of minutes to do what they want. I'm not saying to be grotesque or vulgar or anything like that, but I'm just saying like that's really it's a really amazing concept if you think about it. Like, and that can apply to music and performance. It's like someone giving you an opportunity to express whatever it is that you want to express. That's just really cool.
Yeah, it's super awesome. And like our particular scene, I feel is very open to people to get started. You know, like I don't think that I'm very funny, but they've let me perform here lots of times, and I really appreciate it at the open mic nights. I do kind of want to digress a little bit because you mentioned this, and I notice you really like wrestling. What is your history with that? And like with that character development that they do with wrestling, how did that kind of feed into what you do now with the character that you portray yourself as on stage?
I grew up watching wrestling as a little kid, Saturday mornings, and then eventually we had cable, so we had USA, and then that was doing before it was Monday Night Raw. There was like WWF's like Monday Night Wrestling show, which was like more like a talk show, and then I didn't really have parents who were telling me to go to sleep early on Monday nights, so I was able to stay up later and later to watch that. I was a teenager during the Attitude Era and Stone Cold Steve Austin and DX and The Rock. And yeah, I always thought it was really funny. It's good guy versus bad guy, and then eventually it became more kind of gray area anti-hero stuff with the characters. But wrestling influenced me as far as like the who I am on stage is me either with the volume turned up a little bit more or an exaggerated version of myself. And that's what most of those wrestlers, the ones that have become popular and the ones who have stayed, in people's memories for so long, it's usually that person and it's just their personality just turned up to like 100, you know. The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson is that guy, but as a wrestler, it's still him. He just turns all of the douchiness of himself like as high up as possible, and that's why people resonated with it and loved that character. And still, I mean, that's he's basically still playing that character now as an actor, and that's why when you like, sorry to switch gears. So, like, The Rock has basically played the same type of character in all of his movies except for like Pain and Gain. That's a great movie where he didn't play a normal like Buffy guy, like big buff guy that is, you know, superhero type. And then Central Intelligence, which was a movie he did with Kevin Hart. He plays a very broken on the inside type of character. Be Cool, that was another movie he did. And then he was also in a movie, I can't remember what it was called, but it was with Sarah Michelle Gellar, but he played off character. So that's just a little nugget of that.
I'm gonna figure out a way to transition into this so that it seems smooth. Wrestlers obviously go through these major peaks and valleys that break them or define them. What have been your peaks and valleys as you've been getting into the comedy scene?
I mean, some of the big peaks, like early on, like because of connections I had made being in bands. When I started doing comedy, some of those connections in bands, were aware. One of those allowed me to open up for Brian Posehn early on. And I was like, what? Really? And I was like, do I need to send my clip? He's like, no, man, I vouch for you. It's all like you're good. So I got to do that. I got to open up for a band who got to open for Reggie and the Full Effect at Bell's. Yeah, my friend's band, the Mushmen, they were opening up for Reggie and the Full Effect, and they wanted me to come like open for them. They ended up using that little bit I did as an opening to one of their music videos, so that was pretty rad. That was really rad. I went to Alaska last year for a comedy festival that I got accepted to. That was like one of the big, most recent ones. I did a weekend in Niles, Michigan at the Underground Comedy Club. Did 3 shows, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. That was really awesome. I was featuring for a comedian that I had seen as a child, like as a teenager on Def Comedy Jam. So that was pretty cool. Like that was like really cool. So yeah, those have been like some of the big things. Some of the downside ones are just things that anyone that does anything musical or comedy wise, shows where an audience just did not care to see what was going on or didn't want to be there, makes for a long, lonely drive back home, right? One of the things I used to have on my merch table, but I sold all of them. I had these like small canvases that I bought at the dollar store, and I did art on them. And one of the things I did was I wrote down all of the horrible things that anyone has ever said to me while doing comedy, and then I put in there like cut up stickers of mine in between all the phrases, and those I ended up selling it. But that was a collection of like some of the lowest of lows. Like, I've had people who were drunk say that I should unalive myself because of how bad I am at what I do. Or I did a joke once where I had talked about, being a dad, and then like a drunk guy being drunk was like, yeah, I'm sure your son's going to be real proud of you. You know, Instead of being a dad, you're here doing jokes. It's like, okay, well, I wasn't really thinking about that, but now I am. Thanks, man. That's cool. Having a friend of mine who was like really into what I was doing, he's no longer here, so that was a bummer. Like really bad. I can say that the highs have outnumbered the lows, but the when the lows happen, those hit just as hard. So
I totally understand where you're coming from. The highs also, it's like the feeling you get when you get to perform with someone that you really admire or they compliment you for your set afterwards. It's like insurmountable how good you feel. And it kind of will make it so that things that are more annoying little bites at your ego don't hurt as bad, but obviously like there are some things and like holy I can't believe what people will say. Does Niles have a good comedy scene? I keep seeing comedians come up from there.
So Niles has a really great club called the Underground Comedy Club. Sean, who runs it, does the booking. Like, he's as straight of a shooter as you could ever want as far as a comedy. Well, he's a comedian too, but like a comedian, booker, all that. He saw me do a show at a brewery with some friends of mine. Basically said, "Hey, can you do that again if I have you at my club in 6 months?" And I said, I can do that and more if you need me to. Like they had Bobcat Goldthwait just there. So they're bringing in like people like that, and then also like new and up and coming comedians that have made a splash in the TikTok infused world that we live in. I would say anyone who can get a chance to perform there should, but also not a warning, but just if you reach out to want to perform there, make sure you bring all of what you're saying you can do. It's not like a take this lightly. It's a very well-oiled machine, and it's not just like one show and then that's it. It's two shows, two or sometimes three shows a night.
Wow.
The crowd comes in, you perform, the crowd goes out, they get the room ready for the next set of people to come in.
How long was your set when you had to perform there?
I did 15 to 20 minutes. I was allotted 20 is fine. Don't go over. 15 is perfect. Don't go less.
For people who don't understand what it's like to be a performer, it's enough to perform for like 5 minutes and be kind of exhausted that you've just like gone in front of people, you've put it out there, it either went well or it didn't. And the level of exhaustion can vary, right? But like having to do that multiple times in a night and keep up the energy so that like you're giving the best performance you can each time, it's just like super hard to fathom.
Not to mention if there are people that are in each audience that were in the previous show. Like there was a night where a guy was in like the shows right run right after the other. So I didn't do the exact same set because I was like, well, there's that guy's here. Like I saw him like 20 minutes ago. I can't, he's gonna know. So I added more stuff to like I switched stuff out of my set that I was not prepared to do just because I didn't want to do the same set for an audience member who already saw it.
What a like challenge. But I'm sure that each set was awesome and they'll be asking you back very soon. Before we started the interview, we were talking about how your semester is about to start because we're filming this on January 12th. This probably won't be up until like early February. But you were saying that this semester you're going into like film and media studies, and you're going to be making a documentary where you focus on these cities around the country and into Canada and talk about comedy and mental health. And I really would love to know kind of like more about your inspiration for this, why it's an important conversation, and like kind of what your approach is to this documentary series you're going to be putting out.
So it came about last semester. I was in a class called Cinematic Shorts. One of the assignments was we had to come up with from the second weekend we had to come up with a project that we would want to present as if we were trying to get like funding to be made. And that could have been anything. I was talking to my instructor about like an idea I had. I was like, I thought about like just doing a movie. And she's like, all right, well, what about? And I thought about like maybe stand-up comedy because I like, that's what I do. And she goes, okay, well, just a stand-up comedy documentary. I go, maybe. And then I was thinking that doesn't really have enough like meat to it or teeth to it. So with talking with her, she's like, well, would you want it to be about you? I was like, no, I don't want it to be about me. So I just kept thinking about it. And, like I had recently, at that time, re-entered going to therapy myself after not going for like a year. And I was talking with my therapist about stuff. And it was just kind of like a culmination of all these things. And then it just dawned on me. I was like, well, what if I did a documentary about like me going to do comedy shows and then talking to the comedians? And I had done things in the past with my YouTube channel. I did a series called Why Do You Do This? And it was me interviewing comedians. And I would just ask them, just why do you do this? And then they would just tell me why they do comedy. And then I would kind of poke a little more into based on what their answer was, like, oh, you do comedy because you want to make people laugh. Well, why do you want to make people laugh? And then they would usually give me more in-depth reasons. And sometimes it would go into like mental health, or sometimes it would go about personal life. But using that as like a blueprint, and talking with my instructor, my therapist, the idea came, well, what if I did a documentary movie about mental health and comedy, where I would go to a comedy show that I was on and talk to the other comedians about, how long they've done comedy or why they do it, or, what their feelings are as far as the correlation of comedy and their mental health, good or bad, and just create a way to start conversations to talk about this type of stuff and not make it be like a very private or withheld or scary thing. And then the more I talked about it with my instructor, she said that sounds like a lot more than just like a movie. Like that's like a lot. So then it turned into, what if I did a series and then I took a page out of, like, one of my favorite shows um, on television was a show called Insomniac with Dave Attell. And Dave Attell's a comedian, and it was all about what he would do after his comedy shows into the wee hours of the morning because he can't sleep. So I was like, all right, there's an idea, like cities. So then I thought, all right, well, I could do a whole chunk of shows in Southwest Michigan and interview people, then edit that together as an episode. And that could be Southwest Michigan. Well, I know people that are in Chicago. Go to Chicago and do that. There would be another episode. Then I know people in Indianapolis. I go there, and then Cleveland. And then I thought, well, I can't just do Southwest Michigan when there's the whole state of Michigan. So then I said, all right, then I can do an episode based on like Hamtramck, Detroit, that entire part of the state. And if I'm over there, I might as well just hit up Canada. So
Yeah.
starting in February, every month I'm going to be doing that. And I've started that process of reaching out to people I know that run shows, and just being like, hey, here's what I would like to do. If I could be part of your show, I think that'll make it easier as far as me interviewing everybody. Because a comedian talking to another comedian, I think, is a much easier conversation than, hey, this is Derek. You've never met him or seen him perform. He's going to start asking you questions about your mental health and comedy. Whereas if it's like, oh, that's Derek, you just saw him perform all of his weird little stuff. He's also making a documentary about mental health and comedy. Do you want to talk to him?
That'll be super interesting because obviously, with the world of comedy, most people have like day jobs and stuff. So you'll be able to I mean, not most people, but a lot of comedians will have like a day job to kind of make ends meet until they can get on bigger stages and stuff. And so some people have the privilege of having health insurance while others don't. And you'll be
Hmm.
able to talk more about that. And then it'll be interesting when you get over to Canada to like find out their personal approaches to mental health.
Yeah.
With like the world of comedy today, I feel like there has been a lot more of a conversation about mental health where there are comedians who are very open about it. And that's kind of like part of their performance is to be open about their mental health. We're like children of the 90s, like maybe 80s, 90s. I'm not going to out you for your age or anything because I don't want to out myself other than saying I'm a 90s kid.
Oh, it's okay. I turned 42 tomorrow. So
Oh my God, happy early birthday. I'll be sure to
yeah.
write something on your Facebook. We've seen this progression of comedy and we've watched a lot of amazing comedians fall because of their mental wellness or mental health and not having the support system that they need. So, like, how important do you feel that this conversation is to keep going now that it's been talked about just like a little bit? Like, do you think that the conversation has helped, or do you feel like it needs to just keep going because it'll be forgotten if we don't keep talking about it?
I think it's good that we've had the conversation, but when you still have people ending their lives that shouldn't be, that means the conversation isn't done, the work isn't done, the help is not adequately getting to people who need it. With this project, this series, like I don't plan on trying to like, I'm not, there's not like, oh, I do this and I know money will come in because of it. It's more like I plan on having this like on free streaming services and also be on the public access channels of the cities that I go to. And to me, the real value of it will, if it allows someone to see that who is struggling or scared to even start talking about, what's going on, because we push a lot of things down still nowadays. And to me, I just want people to know that there is help out there and there's nothing wrong for asking for help. And there's no reason to think that you have to do it on your own or that, that you're completely alone or by yourself. Like I'm in therapy and it's great because every week I have someone I can talk to about what's going on. And sometimes, some weeks it's just me talking about what's happened and they don't have any like, light bulb moment for me. And then there's other weeks where I bring up stuff and they give me insight to what I can do to better help myself. And my own opinion is I don't think enough people are realizing that that's out there. They feel that, oh, if I just do comedy, that's therapy enough. But it's not. Like getting on stage and saying out loud like what's going on in your life that could be bad, that's not enough. That you need there are things out there, are people, professionals that can help way more than just getting on stage because the problem with people assuming, and that's the conversation I want to have, is if people who are doing comedy are doing it because they think that's their therapy, it's a one-way street because it's nothing but adulation. Or if it's a bad night, it can be nothing but just awful negative energy coming at you. And a person cannot heal or grow if it's one of one type of emotion, the positive, or it's one of the other of negative.
I mean, given, yeah, some of the comments that you've received from your comedy that were on the darker side, it is not always a healthy place to be. And it is so nice to just have someone who isn't in your daily life, that doesn't have any connection to you or any ties that like they can benefit from anything from you, that they can just listen and kind of help you through the process. I am so excited to see what this project is when it is all done. I feel like just given what it's like to edit this podcast, which is like not really a ton of fine tuning types of things, like no special effects. Maybe I'll add one here. I don't know. But probably might be a little while before people can expect that. I do have a question though. When we were growing up, there were all of these outlets for comedians. There were like satellite radio stations that people could listen to. There was Comedy Central. And like, I feel like when I was a kid, like the top of the top tier comedy was on HBO. But we're living in a different world today. So, like, what is like the top for comedians to shoot for coverage?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I would think, you know, nowadays it would probably be the Netflix special. Like I have a Netflix, like a comedian saying I have a Netflix special. That's to me equivalent to like a person getting an hour on HBO or a person getting a half hour on Comedy Central, or even forever ago, people getting a spot on Johnny Carson. Like those are the top of the top type of situations, right? I think that's still a goal that people want. I do think it's a very interesting thing to see the rise of some comedians who are really, really funny and then they are put in like a stadium setting, which to me you can lose a lot of that personal connection, right? And that applies to bands too. Like I've seen bands that I saw like in a 200 person room years later play in front of 10,000 and I was so stoked for them, but I also felt like, yeah, but I feel like they're not able to really get that connection that they're wanting. And
Yeah.
or if you see like a band that you really like get really successful and then all of a sudden they have pyro, you're like, yeah, that looks cool, but you didn't need to add pyro, Fall Out Boy. You already had catchy songs. Like you could have just rested on that. But no, I think nowadays it's like a Netflix special would still be a goal that if someone had, if they accomplished that, they could say, yeah, bam, I've made it. But now for comedians now, it seems like, oh, they're a funny stand-up comedian. Oh, they've got their special. Oh, we've actually been able to spin that into a TV series that they can be on. Oh, now we can give them into like 4 or 5 movies. And then after like 7 years, people are like, okay, we get it. Enough of it. Like I feel like Bert Kreischer is a is an example of that, where, you know, for a while he was just a guy known for not wearing a shirt on stage. And then one of his jokes got turned into a movie. And then he's was like doing everybody's podcasts left and right. And not saying he's not still successful, but it's I feel like some people are like, all right, man, like cool it. Like, put your shirt on.
I can see the correlation with TikTok though, where it's like you try things out until you find the thing and then you run it to the ground.
Yeah.
Do you have any recommendations of other comedians that you've got to perform with that you feel like deserve to share a little bit of the spotlight tonight?
The first one I'm gonna say he's not from this area. He was in Michigan and now he's back in New York. His stage name is Jimmy Ohio. And just if you like weird stuff that I do, he's totally something that you like. And I put a thing on my Facebook about his merch. He's going through some hard things right now. If you like what he does, buy his merch. There are things that he did with the keyboard that I wish I like. I'm like, damn it, that's funny. I will get to the other people also, but I just want to I want to emphasize something that he did, which to me is one of the funniest things. He did a bit called Dick Jokes. That was the bit, and he had a little Casio keyboard that had a record function where you could say something into the built-in microphone, and then all the keys on the keyboard would be that sound, right? So he would say the word dick jokes into the keyboard. So all the keys would be that. And then he would tell a joke. He's like, you ever like go to the store and like you want to buy stuff to make like egg salad, and then you get home and then you realize that you didn't do dishes, and then you're like, oh man, I can't stay here all night. So then you decide to go out to a comedy show, and then you're sitting in the audience, and then the guy on stage just starts telling dick jokes, and you start questioning what you've done with your life. And then he starts hitting the keys on the keyboard, and it's just like dick jokes, dick joke, dick 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 jokes. And I was, and he did that over and over again, like those type of setups, and that was like the punchline was the keyboard. And the video I saw of him doing that, like the audience was just this slow burn of like one person laughing, and then it was like two people laughing, and then it got the whole audience into it. So, but yeah, sorry to go on a tangent. Jimmy Ohio, go check out his stuff. Also, as far as people like helping out in Kalamazoo that I have seen and really pushing it, and you should contact them. There's everyone over at Slaptail Nation, Beef Man specifically. He runs that, does really good things and puts on shows. I know Bob Fredericks was getting shows back open in Shakespeare's lower level, so that'll be great when that's happening. I mean, Sammy McCrory, not only is she my friend, I've always thought she was funny, so check her out. I feel like if I don't mention a lot of people, they're gonna be like, "What the hell, Derek? You didn't even say like I like your posts all the time on Facebook. You can't even say my name." Ricarlo Williams in Muskegon. He's awesome. I've done shows to him. He's just a good guy. Sean Shank at Underground Comedy Club in Niles. He's hilarious and does a great job out there. Zach Weaver, also in Niles. James Couture in Chicago. Louis D. Michael, who's now in Chicago. The Gillerans, that's their last name. They're hilarious. Yeah, that's just from the top of my head.
I will be limiting you to 10
Okay.
because I have to find all these people and link them in the show description. So if you all want to check out any of these amazing comedians that have been recommended, then please find their Instagram handles or websites otherwise below, which I got to know, dude, where should people look for you?
Specifically on the calendar that I do have as of right now one show so far this year, which will be March 20th at the Dormouse Theater in Kalamazoo, part of a thing called the Misfit Variety Show. They contacted me and then asked if they could send my stuff to the person it's a person from New York that's coming to Kalamazoo with their show, and I'm gonna open that show up. Like I said, starting in February, you should be able to see me around Southwest Michigan filming my documentary, and then March will be Chicago, then April will be Cleveland, and then May should be Indianapolis, and then June will be Detroit, Canada, that side of the state. I'm just working on getting places so I can perform a little bit, just so I can interview people and it not be as awkward as it would be if I was not performing otherwise.
If people are interested in maybe talking to you or
Yeah.
maybe even looking up your comedy, like, is there a contact that they should look for or a website or a handle or anything like that online?
I'm on Instagram at Derek Lee Feltner, and that has the link to my YouTube channel. And also, if you just go to YouTube and search Derek Lee Feltner, I am the first face that pops up. I have a beard in the picture that has all of my videos on it of my performances, including the kind of trailer treatment video that I did for what will be the series. It's on there. It's called "It's Okay, You Can Laugh," and it's from a show I did in Battle Creek in October where I interviewed some of the comedians that were on that show. So if you want to see what it is I'm trying to get done this year, watch that video. And if you want to be part of it or help out or, you know, want to talk about anything like that, feel free to contact me and we can work something out.
Awesome. Well, we've come to the end. Thank you so much for your time. I'm definitely going to come and check out the show in March because I love the Dormouse Theater and I love your comedy. So I'm interested to see what this lineup is all about. I like to spin out like with like end credits and a little bit more info. So of your projects, what is like a song that I can take like 30 seconds from and end this interview with?
Like a song of mine?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I have like stuff on my Bandcamp that you could use. It's all noisy weirdness stuff. So if you can you can pick whatever part from that song that you choose.
Okay.
I will give a warning if you're listening to it with headphones, maybe keep your volume low at first, and then I don't want it to fry your ears because it's on the noise side of noise. It is purposely in that world.
Awesome. Well, thank you again to everybody that's listening or watching or whatever, because I don't really post anywhere that people can listen. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.
Real quick, let's give it up for the sleeveless t-shirts.